Welcome back to In the Moment. I'm Lori Walsh. Have you ever traveled by yourself, or do you think of solo travel as something of a social stigma? In his book, Smart and Solo, author Randell Carlton Green discusses how solo travel can be beneficial to everyone. Green provides insights and tips on how to plan a solitary adventure for those who are ready to experience personal growth through traveling curiosity. Smart and Solo shares advice on how to maximize transportation and lodging choices and capitalize on mistakes while leaving the smallest footprint. SDPB Steve Zmemke spoke with author Randell Carlton Green yesterday afternoon. Green says the stigma of social travel will soon disappear after you realize your freedom to call all the shots.
I think the stigma for most people is that despite going to big cities and everything we do, we think that everybody's looking at us. It's called the spotlight effect. It's this idea that when we're out and about, every single person knows we're by ourselves, and that's somehow a negative thing.
Right away in your book, you discuss how solo travel can be beneficial to anyone. Would you explain and maybe share some of your experience?
Yeah, and the reason that came about is because so many times when I do talk to people about travel, I get the most common thing is, well, I could never take off from work or family or whatever it may be. I didn't want the book just to be for people who were maybe single and just could travel all the time or anything. As far as it's beneficial for anyone and everyone, because when you travel, there's so many things that you learn about yourself. Number one, you get a lot of time to think, you get a lot of time to solve problems, you have time to meditate, and you have time to make mistakes. And that's maybe one of the most important things, because when I travel by myself, I make mistakes. We all do. But when you're by yourself, you have no one else to solve those mistakes other than yourself. For instance, I missed a flight out of Stockholm heading to Reykjavik, and totally my mistake. I went to the wrong terminal. I was kind of embarrassed at myself, but I sat there and said, hey, Randall, this is your own fault, so fix it. You don't have mom or dad to call, and then you fix it. Another time I was lost in a city, didn't know the language, and it's frustrating. But then when I came back from the trip, there was a sense of pride and satisfaction knowing that if I can navigate my way through a foreign country, I can do anything. So having those opportunities basically to fail is something that benefits any traveler. And then on top of that, just learning to meet new people. I make it a point to, before I travel, to start X amount of conversations. Or this trip, I'm going to work on my patience so that when I'm waiting in line, I'm going to be more patient. So I think if you set goals, it's another way that can help you through travel.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was in Montreal last summer, and the only French I knew was parlez-vous anglais and bonjour. That was it. And it was still a fun trip.
Yeah, well, je pratique le français tous les jours, so I practice my French every day as well on an app. Part of that, even when you can bridge cultures and talk to someone, there's this weird sense of happiness and pride when you're able to connect with someone who doesn't speak the same language and who is from a different culture. I know that I've taken many Uber trips around the world, and there's one thing that brings everyone together, and that's soccer or international football. And the guy I was with didn't speak any English, and I spoke minimal French, but I was able to say Real Madrid, Ronaldo, and we laughed.
Yep.
It was just something about that connection. It's something that until you've experienced it, it's hard to describe, because it's so satisfying to know that despite all of our differences in culture and everything, that we are fundamentally the same.
I was going to mention this later, but I'm going to bring it up now because we're on the topic of making mistakes, learning from your mistakes, some personal growth, and you really take a philosophical approach in your book. I had a travel day about 12 years ago that may sound terrible, but some good did come out of it. I started in Glasgow, Scotland, with the intention of being in Manchester, England by mid-afternoon, and I rented a car. So I took a bus from my hotel to the airport, rented the car, and it was a really nice BMW sports car, much to my surprise. I got about 10 miles from the airport when I realized I was going the wrong direction. So I turned around in a small hamlet and started back to the airport, but one of the tires blew out. Having a cell phone in which I was...
Perfect. This is a great story already.
Having a cell phone in which I was unable to call out in Scotland, I had to wave down a car for assistance. So jumping ahead, I got back to the rental agency after a nice dad and his adult daughter stopped to help me make a call. Got the car back to the airport, booked a flight to Manchester instead. I just decided right then and there, I'm not going to drive over the next 7 days, especially down to London. So the airport was fogged in Glasgow. I caught the last flight to Manchester. And the big thing was I was supposed to get there for a concert from one of my favorite bands, and I wanted to get there in time, of course. It was fogged in. The flight was late. I got to Manchester where there was about an hour before the show when I landed, and I had a taxi driver wait for me when I checked in and then finally took me to the venue, and I got there right in time. But the positives, which I wanted to mention out of this, I traveled by train for the first time in the UK, and it was a great way to relax, and it was a great decision to just drop the rental. The other thing, it was Guy Fawkes night when I flew into Manchester, so seeing the bonfires and fireworks. Yeah, I got to see all that from the sky, from the plane. And that's an experience most people will never get to have. The best cab ride ever in Manchester. The guy had a great sense of humor, had me totally engaged through his weaving through traffic for me. And then, I skimmed over some of the real pain in the you-know-what moments, but it all ended up okay. And I just kind of wanted to share that as an example, like we said, of personal growth, which you write about in Smart and Solo, and how some of those things don't turn out too badly.
Yeah, and I think yours is definitely an extreme version of that.
It was planes, trains, and automobiles, to be sure.
Well, actually, I want to know first, this is very important, what was the band you were headed to see?
The Charlatans.
Okay, wonderful. And, being there on that night is something that had, that not happened, you would not have been able to see it from the sky. And I just think, yes, during the time, it's stressful. But you're going to miss your train. You're going to miss your flight. These things are going to happen. But after the fact, the growth occurs, and you're going to sit back and just say, I can do anything. You were able to go from a foreign country, flag somebody down. Your next day back in the office was easy after something like that.
Yeah, it was quite an experience, and something that you don't expect to have happen, and really you can't always prepare for that. But let's talk about the preparation. One of the things I really don't like spending time doing is sitting at my computer and looking through all kinds of hotels and flights. Mm-hmm. It just kind of maddens me because it's like, okay, that's a great idea, and then you go to another site, oh, that's even better, and then you have second thoughts.
Exactly.
What's the best way to work that situation, especially when you see that as being the biggest pain in your vacation?
Well, I first of all changed my mindset on it because, yes, it's a painstaking approach and can be very frustrating. But I have flipped it into looking for kind of the opportunities. I've used it now as a chance to find something great. Because a lot of times when I travel, I don't set out to know where I want to go. I let the prices dictate it. For instance, one time I was leaving Dublin and I was on my way to Prague, but the last minute the price doubled. So I said, I'm just not going to go there, and I went to Nice, France instead. So for me, looking at trips, it is frustrating. It's not that enjoyable, but I've used it as an opportunity to find those amazing deals that you just have to take care of. That's number one. But number two, for the actual part of it that I've been able to streamline is Google Flights. Now that you don't actually buy the ticket off of Google Flights, but they will direct you to every site there is. You can even write in something like, let's say you're like, I need to go somewhere, but I don't know where I want to go. You could type from where you're leaving to just Europe, and it will give you all the cheapest and most affordable prices in Europe. So that could dictate where you want to go as well. And then Kayak does something similar, and there might be some new ones popping up. But for me, in the past, actually there's a third: Google Flights, Skyscanner, and Kayak. Those three, and because you can type in things like just Europe or a continent or even specifics like Eastern Europe, it actually makes it a little more exciting because you don't know what's going to happen. So you can look and you decide, wow, all of a sudden Cartagena, Colombia is the cheapest place or most affordable place in South America, and it could lead to just a whole bunch of daydreaming and excitement on that angle of it. So I would just say, before you do it, think of it as an opportunity to find something amazing as opposed to kind of a painstaking process that you have to take care of.
As a person who does a lot of solo traveling, my own safety is something I take into consideration on every trip. What's your advice to those who set out on their own, knowing that all the planning in the world may still not be enough to avoid a bad situation?
Yeah, and that's usually one of the most common questions I get, especially from female travelers. And so you do have to take care of your safety first and foremost. And your safety also along the lines of just being healthy and everything. It is important to take those steps. It's also important to know that bad things can happen anywhere and everywhere. You've all heard people say, don't go to this part of town, it might be bad. But bad things can happen anywhere. I know in the past when I've mentioned about going to a place like Vietnam, that people have been like, is it safe? And from, the past problems that they've had, problems can happen anywhere in the world. So that's number one, just to understand that. And then there's certain steps you need to take. You need to make sure that you have a travel card with you, just with your basic information that you have, not on your phone, because some of these places, you could be in the middle of nowhere and your phone's not going to work, or the local phone service might not convert, or whatever it may be. So you have to know that. Let someone know, even if you are traveling by yourself, even if you are introverted, reach out to somebody, let them know that what you're doing. Visit the state government's website to see if there are any regulations or certain things that they require. Definitely do your research and your due diligence on that aspect of it. Know that something can happen anywhere, and as a tourist, oftentimes we stand out. We could be a target, so you definitely don't want to make yourself a target. You dress appropriately in certain places. That's why the State Department, things like that, will help you out as far as how you need to dress and how you need to behave. And there's a whole chapter on that as far as just taking care of yourself first, because if you want to make a lifestyle of traveling, you have to put your health and put your safety first.
Right. Randell Carlton Green is our guest. He's the author of Smart and Solo, the blueprint for efficient and enjoyable solo travel. On that same topic, Randell, one of the things you mentioned in that chapter is a fake wallet. Tell us your idea of a fake wallet and why that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, we've all, I'm sure most listeners have had to update their debit card over the last year. Well, don't throw it away, keep it. And then put together a small fake wallet that you have, maybe an old ID, one or two old debit cards, and maybe something else to throw off the scent, for it could be a local grocery store card. And then have that. And then if in the horrible situation that you are demanded for your wallet, and which will happen, and it probably happens to somebody that each of us know, then you can offer that up. Maybe put a small amount of bills, just some singles, some U.S. singles, or even a couple local currency, whatever it may be. And then that way you actually have something to provide in the event that you are ever demanded for your wallet. And then with that, it's kind of the old adage of not keeping all your eggs in one basket. Keep your regular money, your regular wallet somewhere else. Definitely not in the back pocket for men or women. And just someplace more secure, within a couple layers as well. But something like a fake wallet is just good, just in case something bad ever does happen. It has happened, and I have not to me personally, but I do know people who've actually used this scenario in the past as well.
It's a good idea, and I plan to employ that the next time I travel. I like that. That's the back pocket wallet, and the real one stays someplace different.
Yeah, and because a lot of times pickpockets work in crews and in busy places where you're riding public transportation. That is the opportune time where you don't know where someone's hand could be. So that's definitely why back pocket's not a great location for that.
Travel is a great way to forget about our worries, and I bet you visit with people that think they can't afford a trip or a vacation. You kind of touched on this at the outset. Are there some things you've picked up or learned throughout your travel that can turn that doubt into departure for those on a tight budget?
Well, first of all, I like that, doubt to departure. I like that. Start small. If a family can't take the kids they have a family so they can't leave the kids, can't go on a big trip, but a mom or dad could go away for a hike in the closest mountain. That's number one. Little short trips just to get in that feel of travel. And then after you take a few trips, you're going to realize the value and how much you love and the importance of travel. So then you're going to start taking measures to save money towards it. I know after the first trip I went on, the first international trip, it was very difficult to click the purchase button on that ticket because I didn't know if it was worth it, paying that much money for an international trip. But then since then, after that, now I do everything I can. I quit my daily coffee. You quit a daily coffee, that costs anywhere between $3 to $5 in a month. That ends up being $150, and that's a plane ticket somewhere. So I'd say start small. Go on a hike at the closest place. Go somewhere maybe a couple hours away. I said another route that I go is looking at different ways to purchase tickets as well when it comes to the actual purchase ticket. So sometimes you want to buy, let's just say, from place X in the United States to place Z in Europe. If you buy a round-trip ticket, oftentimes there's an extra $200-300 that the airlines will add on instead of buying one-way tickets. So I prefer to buy one-way tickets because there's not that extra fee that incorporates on there.
I really enjoy solo travel myself because you're your own boss. You can get out of bed when you want. You can go see whichever exhibits or attractions you want. You can go to whatever concerts or sporting events you want. Exactly. It really is a great way to be creative for one thing, but just enjoy the things that you enjoy out of life. And it's interesting. We were talking before we started recording that one of your interests was seeing all of the Major League Baseball parks. How are you coming along on that?
Well, tonight, I'm at Park 17, so I'm in Atlanta, Georgia for the first time. And this was actually the reason why I started solo travel, was I wanted to see all 30 baseball parks because they all vary in size, shape, and design. And when I was traveling initially, finding people to go with you to some of these baseball towns was really what made me become a solo traveler. Because I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, so it was, hey, does anybody want to go to Detroit this week? And I got 0 takers. And it was like, okay, well, if not Detroit, how about Cleveland? How about Baltimore? How about Cincinnati? And lovely cities, but as far as popular tourist destinations, they're not.
Yeah.
So because of that, I was forced to go as a solo traveler, and that's kind of what kickstarted everything. And like you said, I can go where I want, I can go when I want, I can go to whatever game I want to go to, and all of the above. So that's definitely what started it all off, and I'm still working on that. Pittsburgh is next, so Atlanta tonight, and then Pittsburgh next.
That's awesome. By the way, I'm a fan of the old Tiger Stadium. I loved that old ballpark. I miss it.
It's, you know what? It's one of those things where it's a dump, but it's my dump, and I love it.
Exactly. Is there anything about Smart and Solo that you'd like to share? Something we maybe haven't covered to this point?
Well, there's a chapter on it that it is growing, and since I finished the book, I've learned so much more about it because of the importance of it. And it's called the Emerald Rule. And in that chapter, I discuss about, as a traveler, you have an added responsibility. You are not just an ambassador of where you're from. You're not just an American or a Brit or wherever it is. You're an ambassador for all travelers. And anyone who travels needs to understand the importance of minimizing their footprint. Is that when these places that we go to are precious, and it's the fact that we can go to someplace else and visit is a luxury, not a right. So in order to have this experience, we need to do our best to maintain and make the world a better place in those places. So when you're traveling, don't just be a superficial tourist who's just there to not can worry about the local place, just leaving trash wherever. Try to do what you can to leave a minimal footprint, which could be just with trash or which is the amount of travel you do, and then also just being a great citizen, being nice to others, being kind to others. How many times have you been on a plane or a flight's late and you just hear people complaining, or people, how many times have you been trying to get off a plane and 3 people cut you, or when you're waiting for your plane to be called and they call a group C, you can board, and 7 people just kind of pushing an elbow in for that spot. Let the person in front of you go. Help someone else with their luggage. And be nice to other people. Be nice to the locations you can. In that chapter, there's also opportunities that you can volunteer when you travel. Some of those actually will help you with the traveling. Some places, some of the volunteering I mentioned, there will actually provide lodging. But just a way to, there's another one where you can, while you're in Israel, you can plant trees. So just seek and find out ways to leave the locations better than you found them, but also spread great will as a tourist, because as a solo traveler, you're not just an ambassador for your country, but you're an ambassador for all travelers, and that's a very important responsibility.